possible to find someone who is amazing at all of those things and is like a unicorn, but
It's only worth it if you work for it. I won't stop till they hear me now. I won't stop till I wear the crown.
hi there. Welcome to another episode of the Diary of a Wellness Bodybuilder. I'm IBB Wellness Pro Sumaya Sarwar, your host, and today we are going to be talking about how to pick the right bodybuilding coach for you. I have been competing since 2018. And I used to compete in women's figure. Then I switched over to women's wellness. I've been a wellness athlete since 2021. And I received my IFBB Pro card at NPC Nationals in 2023. I also won the overall title for the wellness division. Between 2018 to where I am now, I have been through a lot of different coaches. I am a coach myself at this point. So I know how hard it can be finding the right coach for you. And sometimes we may work with someone, and as we grow, what we look for changes, and what they offer and their coaching style also changes. So we may no longer be compatible. That is completely fine. I'll use myself as an example. When I started out in 2018, I had been working out on and off for a while, and I have been dabbling with bodybuilding for about 1 or 2 years. I would say since 2016, I was taking it seriously to become strong, to build some muscles, and things like that. But I didn't really know a lot, specifically when it came to nutrition, when it came to supplements, or even working out, utilizing the right muscles, what exercises I need to do. I was learning. I knew what a trainer would know, but not to the point of like competitive bodybuilding. So I was looking for a coach that was local. That was one of the things that I was looking for. So that kind of narrowed down my search of like the bodybuilding coaches that were available in my area. And keep in mind, if that is something that is important to you and you want to meet with your coach to train with them or kind of like develop a personal relationship, that can be one of the pillars, one of the requirements that you have. That's totally fine. Now, the next thing I would say is there's a difference between someone who's a trainer versus someone who is a coach specifically to guide you for a bodybuilding competition. Because it's not that difficult to become a trainer, right? Anyone who has like lost some weight or learned a little bit about working out, there's a lot of different opportunities, no shades to anybody, to take an exam and get certified and get a job at a gym. Just because I have been there and I have worked for gyms does not necessarily mean that I know a lot more that goes into when it comes to conditioning, when it comes to developing, let's say, lower body dominant kind of physique, or when it comes to carbs, macros. I know the basic at that time when I started out for lifestyle clients, but I personally didn't know a lot when it came to competitive bodybuilding. So I looked for a coach that was one, someone who is a competitor, and I was also looking for someone who have athletes that have competed. That way they know more than just like the working out part, right? Specifically the nutrition. Because by that point I had only bulked on my own. So those were the two things at that point I was looking for. Someone who's local, someone who have worked with other competitive bodybuilders and or competed themselves. Now, those were the main things I was looking for. Reason being, as a first timer, sometimes we are nervous and we don't feel like we can trust and depend on someone who we have never met personally or who is probably not going to be there with us on a day to day basis, or we would probably not see them when it comes to training or fixing our forms or um, being there with us backstage. Now, I'm talking about 2018. Things have changed a lot since then. Post COVID, we're very social media focused, and Zoom, Skype, FaceTime, like having coaches from a whole different country, it's very normalized. Back then, that wasn't the case before COVID. So I would say, though, now you don't necessarily have to do that if you don't want to. I personally, years down the road now, my coach is actually from a whole different country, right? And we are doing great. The next thing I learned is that when we're looking for a coach, sometimes it is important to get someone who aligns with the values that you have. For example, if you're someone who is dead set on staying a natural athlete and you go to someone who works mostly with people that are enhanced, not saying that they can't help you get to the point that you want to get to. However, pay attention to that. Like that could be something that doesn't align with you, and maybe you prefer going to someone who predominantly works with natural athletes that compete in natural federation, or even if it's not natural federations, that's totally fine. Just pay attention to those little details because you don't want to work with someone who would push something onto you that you're not comfortable with. And just because everybody else on that team, all the other athletes are doing it, you feel kind of peer pressured into it. That did not happen to me. I made the choice of becoming an enhanced athlete all on my own. But be mindful of that. If that's something that is important to you, I would suggest look for someone who knows either how to help athletes that want to stay natural or a natural athlete themselves. You know, just keep that in mind. So, next thing to look for, I would say, is what's your budget? Even before, like, can you afford to pay X amount of money per month? Or do you want to pay, like, let's say 6 months at a time or 1 year at a time, right? So a lot of times when it comes to coaches, we don't want to pay a lot, especially novice athletes. You know, it's expensive. But from what I have seen, a coach that is like already producing, let's say pro bodybuilders or overall winners, or even people that are stepping on Olympiad stages, their prices are a little bit higher. So the way I justify it is that if I pay less, right, like I'm paying somebody $150 a month, but they haven't produced the results that I'm looking to achieve, it's going to take me longer to get there. Think of it like a car, right? You're driving a car, and just because the GPS system installed car was going to be a little bit more expensive, you chose one that does not have that, and now you're sitting there with a paper map trying to figure out which streets to take to get to your destination. So that's going to take you longer to get there. So I'd rather pay for the GPS installed car that's going to help me get to my goal in a safe manner, in a timely manner. And yeah, that's my logic. So if you are looking to kind of like try somebody out, a lot of these like high end coaches, they do month to month, but there is like a startup fee. I think that's kind of like an insurance. That way you don't just like pay 1 month and disappear. But for me personally, ever since like I would say 2020, when I started with my first wellness prep coach, John Jewett, since then I've been paying up front. Like I pay for like a whole year at a time. I look at it as an investment and I save up the money ahead of time because I don't like to worry about the payment month to month or things like that. I'm making a commitment. In my mind, it's like when I'm making that commitment, there's no backing out, even if like things get hard. And also, like it takes a little bit of time to get to know each other. Like if you and the coach are a good match, what's the coach's style? He or she also needs to know your body type, your stress level. Like, it's not just like a cookie cutter plan that they're giving you and you're following that and it's going to be a good match. No, there's only so much we can understand about a dynamic from like a consultation call or by looking at somebody's post and things like that on social media. So I personally feel like I need to commit like a year with someone at least to see if we are a right match, if we're going somewhere, or things like that. For me personally, I usually like to do like a bulk, a few shows, and things like that. I don't give up on my coaches because we're learning each other. Like, it's, think of it as a science experiment, right? So the person is learning if your body handles a little bit carb and a lot more protein better, or like what's the best way to peak you, or do you do better doing cardio on stairmaster, or does that cause you more fatigue? So then maybe he or she would put you to do stationary bike instead. So all those little things are like data that you're sharing and that person is learning from watching you, and those data are being collected over time that can be used to help you achieve your goal. So if you go from like coach to coach every 2 months, every 3 months, because you don't like the way they talk to you or you don't like their method, you're not giving the process a chance to see if you guys could even go anywhere together. That's like something I would say be mindful of when it comes to committing to a coach. Another thing I would say for females working with male coaches, and I'm not by any means saying that this happens with every male coach, but I have personally experienced it myself. Sometimes working with coaches that are not in a committed relationship, or that are not married, or like in our age group, it doesn't even have to be in the same age group, they sometimes cross certain lines, or they would make a pass at you, or sexual comments, and it can be uncomfortable. I'm not saying not all of them are. I had experienced that. So one of my rules became that I would only work with male coaches that are married, right? Or that are in a committed relationship. That way I don't have to worry about any of that. So if you're uncomfortable like me, I was uncomfortable, so that became one of my must when I'm looking for a coach. But later on, I ended up being like, you know what, I just prefer to work with a female coach. And I did work with Dr. Sunny Andrews for a while. Everything was great. I'm so grateful to her, learned so much from her. But then I'm now back with the male coach. So that's what I mean. Like, it's going to change because at this point of my journey, the kind of individual, the kind of athlete that I have became, and the caliber of coaches that I'm going to, that is not even an issue. Like, that is not even something that comes around, at least thankfully in my case. I know some people, even at high top like pro leagues, or I don't know, Olympians, have had unfortunate experiences. So it is good to be mindful of. But for me, that is not a determining factor for me right now when it comes to picking a coach. Another thing I would say is, when you're looking for a coach, look for what kind of certification or background is important to you. For instance, in the past, I had worked with coaches who didn't necessarily have any sort of um, degree or things like that in medical background or nutrition. So when I chose John Jewett, he was a registered dietitian before he started the coaching. So it's like, okay, this is the right person to go to, because that is when I needed to change my physique and I needed to grow my legs, and I could not crack the code for nutrition, the macros and things like that. So with him is when I learned the importance of eating a certain way, what type of protein works best for me, for my digestion and things like that. I learned a lot. And so that became something I was looking for. And then when I went to Dr. Sunny Andrews as my next coach, she's a doctor, that's when I was more focusing on getting my hormone right, because even though my cortisol level was low, I was having difficulty building muscle, and we kind of fixed my hormone from there. So if that is something that you want to look at, be mindful of that and look for coaches. A lot of the coaches have like their specialty, right? Some coach, their specialty is fixing their clients' gut health, or some coach may be very knowledgeable on building your lower body, or some coach may be very good at body mechanics and stretching and things like that. It is possible to find someone who is amazing at all of those things and is like a unicorn. But when you are a novice, or when you're going from all these different stages of like doing amateur level competition to national level competition to pro competitions, what you look for and what you need to improve on is going to change along the way. So you're going to know to seek out those things, and that's going to be your priority. Other than that, I would say when you go to a coach, just be open minded, right? And try not to talk badly about the past coaches that you have had, because for us, people that we do offer coaching services, we look at it as red flags. Because if you're coming to me and you're already talking shit about the person who had helped you in the past, what is it to say that if things don't go the way you want them to go between you and I, that you're not going to go and do the same thing and talk badly about me? And that also shows immaturity, right? Sometimes we are jaded based on how our experiences go, and sometimes we feel hurt and things like that, or we feel like our coach didn't do everything. But think of it this way: this is something new you're trying, this is somebody new you're working with. How much time you want to commit to the process is up to you. If you're in a deadline and you're like, okay, I'm only going to do this one show and I have to win overall and go get my pro card this year, I would say pace yourself. Coaches are not miracle workers. They're working with your genetics, your stress level, your habits, the way you train. There's a lot two people are coming together to work on. So they may not get it right the first time. You obviously haven't gotten it right all this time. That's why you're looking for somebody to help you. So sometimes I've been there, I've done that as a client also, like things wouldn't go right and I would get hurt and upset. But as I have gotten older and become a better athlete, I have learned to be graceful. I have learned from those mistakes, and I have learned to let go even when things don't go right. Show the respect to the coaches that have helped you along the way. We're all human. We all make mistakes. You're gonna make mistakes. They can make mistakes. But end of the day, you learn from that and you work together. So don't talk shit about them and just keep it moving. That is my advice. So do your research, find the right coach, and go reach that goal. You got this.